robbers, who stripped him of his clothes and belongings and beat him and went their way, unconcerned, leaving him half dead. The geography is Jerusalem is at a higher altitude than Jericho. That's why they said down. It's about a 17-mile track, I think, is what the guy said. Down a mountain, rough terrain. It was the perfect place for robbers to hide in caves and hide around the rocks and whatever else terrain is there and beat you up and do exactly like they did this guy and get his spoils. So it's interesting that it's probably the only way down the mountain, or one of the only ways down the mountain. We know it's not a safe way down the mountain because the robbers, it's their real estate. But in essence, it may be the safest of the unsafe ways down this mountain. And the only way to get from Jerusalem to Jericho was to go down the mountain. So they had no choice. Now let's set it up a little further because we're going to be talking about priests and Levites. The priests took turns serving in the temple in Jerusalem, 1 week at a time. And most of them didn't live in Jerusalem. So the priests had no choice but to go back and forth on this path at least once or twice a year. The Levites was the servant to the priest. He did what the priest needed done. Same thing. I don't know if they had the same Levite or a different Levite, or if you had your crew, So the Levite didn't live in Jerusalem. Same thing. His time to serve, he had to go back and forth. So there's the scenario. We don't know why the guy that got beat up was going back and forth. I'm going to give you a couple hints when we get to it, just something to think about. We don't have an accurate idea. We don't know why the Samaritan is going back and forth. But I'm going to give you some hints to think about, but we have no accurate idea. So there's the scenario. All of these people are going on a path, on a journey somewhere to get somewhere else. Aren't we all on a journey? Just a side note, And I'm going to give you some words with each of these guys as we're going to really make you think about each person as an individual. So 31. Now by coincidence, a priest was going down the road. Is God sovereign? So God knows everything that's going to happen, everything that has happened, everything will happen. So in essence, is there any coincidences in our life? At the moment, we may think that. But God causes people to be on the same pathway, going to and from the same place at the right time for the right purpose. So it's not a coincidence that the priest was on this because, one, we know he was working. He just got done his religious duty, a priest. Make it modern day. Our pastor just got done serving church on Sunday and is walking home. That was what you see. So you have this guy that was worshiping and serving God and presenting God to the masses in an atmosphere of awesome, the best service you ever can imagine. This is what was happening, and now he's going home. So it's not a coincidence. God knew that guy was going to be serving that week, and he knew that the robber was going to beat that guy up, and he was going to be in the ditch. It's not coincidence that they were going. But here's a preacher, our pastor, and the guy's in the ditch. Obviously, the pastor's going to feel for the guy and call the ambulance, call 911, right? Obviously, he's going to wait till someone that can really help him, because I just came for service. If I touch this dude, he's bleeding, I'm going to be unclean, and they ain't going to let me in my house when I get home, and my kids, and if he's got kids and family, can't welcome me home when I have to sleep in the doghouse. So who's this guy thinking about? Himself. How many times we ride up and down the roads, we go different places, and there's a need that we obviously can meet. I'm not talking about the ones that we may or may not be. I'm talking about the ones you know you can meet. And you're going through life, you cross paths with certain individuals. I'm too busy. It's going to cost me something. I'll keep on going. And that's what this priest was doing. It wasn't a coincidence. He was in a hurry to get home for whatever reason. He had a reason not to help this guy. This is in our terms, again, a pastor of the church. The lead pastor of the church. Just totally ignoring the pain and hurt that was along the side of the road that he is called to serve those people. Going down the road, when he saw him, doesn't have excuse, got home. Hey man, did you hear about that guy got beat up and had a car accident on the way home? It's the same road you live on. Oh, I didn't see nothing. Yeah, he saw him. So when he saw him, he had to make a conscious decision to do an act, right? He chose purposely to keep on walking. He saw him, and his action was he passed by on the other side. Wow. I see you over there, but I'm going to walk on that side of the road. Something bad's happening over there, but I'm going to walk on that side of the road. I have the bandages. I have my first aid kit with me. I have a phone that I can call 911. I have whatever you want a scenario you want to picture in your mind of this guy being abandoned by the religious leader of the time is what happened. And this is what Jesus is telling them. The next guy comes along, the Levite. Almost the same exact scenario. Awesome worship, great services. You know, maybe he had to do a few things. He had to pick things up at the end of the service, but the preacher gets to leave right away. But he's got to lock up the church. He's got to put things away. He's got to make sure everything's okay. So he wasn't. We don't know how far behind he was. He may have been minutes. He may have been hours. We don't know. But he was right on his heels. And he's going down the road, and let's see what Jesus says about him. Likewise, a Levite also came down to the place and saw. Same thing. The servant of God. Not the head pastor, a servant of God. Whether you want to call him associate, youth pastor, worship leader, whatever. The servant of God saw the same thing that the preacher saw. Obviously, he's going to do something different. Saw him and passed by on the other side of the road. Did the exact same thing. What thought pops into my mind? What if they wasn't so far apart? What if they were close enough that this Levite saw that pastor?
And thought he should do the same thing.
He's on his heels.
Right.
He sees him. Maybe in this stretch, because you're looking down the mountain, maybe you can see a mile or two down the mountain. Remember, they're going down the hill. So they've seen this guy probably laying on the side of the hill for a while, contemplating on what they should do when they get there. And maybe this Levite goes, well, the pastor went on the other side and walked by. Well, obviously that's what I'm supposed to do, because he's my mentor, he's my leader, and I'm a servant of his, so obviously that's what I'm going to do. Is it possible that that's what could have happened? I don't know. But I do know human nature. Human natures copy what we see.